King has been diagnosed with cancer. Joining me now is oncologist who has been described as a leading world authority on cancer. He is, of course, Carol Sikora. We don't know all the details yet, Carol, but what does it mean when you're diagnosed at the age of the King?
It's difficult to piece together what's really happening, Mike. He went into hospital 2 weeks ago for an operation for an enlarged prostate, very common in all men over 70, and completely benign. And then 10 days later, we get this announcement that he has cancer. Almost certainly what's happened, bits were removed during the procedure, sent to pathology. It takes about 10 days to get the result because you have to do all sorts of processing in the lab, and cancer cells were seen. Quite where, we're not sure. That's not been disclosed. We're told it's not prostate cancer. So the most likely site is the bladder, or even the tube connecting the bladder to the outside world that goes through the prostate, called the urethra. Urethral cancer is extremely rare. Bladder cancer is much more common. So that's the most likely site. The other possibility is some sort of glandular cancer in the lymph nodes that's been spotted. Certainly something's been identified. And the King's been very open about it so far. And in fact, the release from Buckingham Palace this evening was pretty open. I suspect people are genuinely not committing because they're not totally sure, but his medical team are not totally sure what's actually happening.
So do you think it might be the case that they will be more specific once they absolutely know what type of cancer it is?
I think they will. I think from what I've seen of King Charles, he'll announce it once it's definite. I mean, the trouble is, medical diagnosis is a fluid thing and may need more tests. The good news, Mike, is that, before the operation, they almost certainly would have done some scans to see if there was any evidence of spread of anything outside the pelvis, the bones, the liver, the lung, and that was clearly negative. And this has come as a bit of a surprise to everybody. And when you get medical surprises, it's very difficult for the public relations team to know how best to handle it until it's completely worked out.
Right.
I suspect by Monday next, we'll be in a much better position to know exactly what's happening. And I'm sure the King will tell people. He's been honest so far about his illness. He'll be honest again. And, it's not the end of the world. A cancer diagnosis, 50% of people are cured, many more that are healthy. He looks good, he's slim, he's active. He's likely to survive a normal lifespan, I would suggest.
Well, certainly the statement appears to be pretty optimistic, doesn't it? It says that he's going to continue working, albeit he won't be going out and about perhaps as much, but, he will be having treatment while continuing to work. So, for those of us who don't know as much about cancer treatment as you do, presumably the treatment will not be terribly sort of debilitating.
No, what's happened, I've been an oncologist for as long as I can remember, nearly 50 years, and cancer treatment has got so much better, both chemotherapy and radiotherapy, so much less unpleasant for everybody. And it's likely that he's being put up for radiotherapy by the sound of the things coming out. And that's done usually in the same hospital he had the surgery, the London Clinic. They have a very lovely radiotherapy unit opened by the Queen about 12 years ago. And it's high tech, wonderful. And I'm sure that's where he'll go for treatment. The suggestion that he'll be going regularly for treatment suggests that it's going to be radiotherapy rather than chemotherapy. And that suggests it's local, the disease, which will have a good prognosis, a good outcome. So I think we can be optimistic. And, people have a very negative feeling about cancer. And I think by coming out of it and by talking about it for him, it's great, because the sort of negative feelings we heard from the world news about cancer being very sad, the end of the world, it's not true. People do survive, and survive a long period of time.
No, of course. And we know from the reports about his prostate procedure that people in their droves went to the NHS to be checked out. I think the numbers of men going to get their prostates checked went up by 1,000%. So presumably this might have a similar effect.
I think it will. And not only that, it allows people to talk about their disease. Some people with cancer want to hide it. They want to, even from their families, they don't want to talk about it. They pretend they're going somewhere for the day and they're really going to hospital for treatment. That is the old Victorian attitude to cancer. And, surely in the 21st century, we can get around that. The other thing is the success of cancer treatment depends how early it's caught. And if we can get it early, fantastic. So people shouldn't be worried about coming forward. And I think what the King is going to do is to use that. He's also going to use a lot of holistic therapies, complementary medicines, I'm sure. And that's only for the good, as long as he has the treatment, the orthodox treatment as well, which he will.
And do you think this might give a bit of a boost as well to cancer centres, cancer treatment centres? I mean, you and I speak quite a lot about how much more could be done for those people who are not fortunate enough to be members of the royal family, who might be waiting for some kind of treatment.
I think that's the tragedy in the UK at the moment. We are the bottom of the league table of a disease that's becoming more common and is actually the cause of a quarter of all deaths in this country. And it is one of the sadnesses of my profession that we look at it and it's all possible to treat, but not when it's too late. And the diagnostic phase is probably the worst in Europe at the moment. The time spent getting to a diagnosis and getting to start treatment. The target the NHS has is 62 days from diagnosis to treatment. King Charles obviously won't have to wait 62 days for treatment. But just imagine now if you had to wait 62 days, knowing you've got cancer, that's the tragedy in the NHS at the moment. And it's reversible. It's reversible instantly with a bit of sensible management.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, one of the other things about the way that all of this happens is that not a lot of people know they've got cancer, do they? Because they don't necessarily feel any different.
Exactly. You don't look different. You don't feel different. You can still play golf or whatever your sport is. You can do it. You may feel a bit tired. One of the problems for cancer patients is going to hospital on such a regular basis. A lady with breast cancer, for example, in the first year may have to go to hospital for 100 times in 1 year. That's a third of the days in a year, more or less. She's going to have to go to hospital for tests, for radiotherapy, for chemotherapy, for scans, and so on. So anything that can be done to make everything faster. And, our NHS is not the fastest delivery service in the world, as you know.
And with 1 in 2 people now reportedly suffering from cancer, or at least getting some kind of cancer, I mean, that's an extraordinary number of people when you think about the population of this country.
It is. Everybody knows someone with cancer. And, it is a disease that's come. And it's a disease of, predominantly older people, like the King, but young people do get it. But the increase is mainly because of aging. I'm sure pollution, smoking's gone down, pollution's a problem, bad diets, lack of exercise, alcohol overuse, and so on. These are all contributory factors. But the biggest driver of cancer incidence is aging. So if you look around the world, sub-Saharan Africa, the poorest part of the world, have very low cancer, but it's coming up. And it's a good thing, in a sense, because it means there are less deaths in young people from tuberculosis, AIDS, and malaria. So the reverse of that is you get cancer. So putting better cancer treatment facilities in place makes such good sense for the future.
Absolutely. Professor Carol Sikora, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We wish you well.